Hola, buenos dias, amigos. My name is Steve Bell, and I live in Big Piney, Wyoming. I teach Spanish 1, 2, and 3 at Big Piney High School, a small high school of about 180 students. I learned Spanish in Honduras, Central America, about 18 years ago as an ecclesiastical missionary and studied Spanish education at BYU, Idaho. I also have a master's degree in educational leadership from Northern Arizona University, and I just completed my 14th year of teaching. Woohoo! Today I'll be presenting ideas and activities related to Google Maps and how you can use maps in your classroom as an engaging tool to learn new words, find virtual realia, explore cultural sites, reinforce comprehensible input, and facilitate high-level discussions about places where our languages are spoken. Given our current situation of COVID-19, these activities lend themselves well to virtual learning and are highly engaging from home. I hope you enjoy the presentation, and I look forward to sharing these ideas with you.
Google Maps, we all use them. I gotta confess that I am a huge map nerd. I spend hours and hours looking at maps, at mountain ranges, at rivers, at exploring new cities. And I just think it's fascinating that we can get to know our world in a very virtual way. You know, it was not possible even 10 years ago. And so the title of my presentation is actually Virtual Realia, because everything we're going to be doing is on Google Maps and it's virtual. Realia are any objects or text that is authentic in the target language. So for example, if you went to Mexico and you brought back a menu, that would be considered realia. And you could use that in the classroom then to order food in an authentic way. It could be something as, you know, currency from the country, or even like this belt buckle that I bought in Mexico, Los Tigres del Norte. And then it could also be objects that help to teach culture, such as this miniature Mayan statue, okay? And so we're going to be looking for realia, not actual tangible realia, but stuff we can find in Google Maps. Okay, mostly we'll be focusing on language acquisition, but we'll also be doing some cultural things as well. Before we get into the sustenance of what these activities are, let's look at the actual three modes of communication. We have interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. These activities can be interpersonal because almost all of them you can do in partners or in groups. Most of what we do is going to be interpretive because you're finding realia from Google Maps, and then you're going to be using Google Translate to find out the meaning of what the text is. And then lastly, presentational. Some of these are better than others for presentational, but I have my students present their findings or even like give instructions on how to get from point A to point B on the map in front of the classroom. And also these activities are customizable to all proficiency levels. You just need to be creative and differentiate, you know, depending on what level of Spanish you're teaching, and differentiate with amongst your students as well. Chancho, when you are a man, sometimes you wear stretchy pants in your room. It's for fun. So that was kind of embarrassing. So right after I did that clip, I was sitting in here with my Lucha Libre mask on, and our custodian came to the door and saw me in here with my Lucha Libre mask on talking to myself. So I have to say this mode of presentation is a little bit awkward, as I'm just sitting in my classroom by myself talking to myself. And I know you guys are out there, but not yet. And so it's just kind of weird. But anyways, let's get into the activities that I have using Google Maps. So I've got 4 activities. You're not limited to these 4. I mean, these are just 4 that, you know, that I use in my classroom that have shown to be effective. And you can think of any variations off of these or come up with your own. You know, really, I'm just trying to provide Google Maps as a tool that we can use in the classroom in some ways to do that. So the first one is called Búsqueda de Palabras Nuevas in Google Maps, which means Google Maps new word search. And I'll be going over each one of these in depth. Second one is called Búsqueda de lugares in Google Maps, which is a Google Maps places search. The third activity is called ¿Cómo se va?, which means how do you get to, and that's one where they're going to be giving instructions on how to get from point A to point B. And then the last activity isn't really a set activity, it's just using maps to teach culture. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the first activity called Búsqueda de palabras nuevas, a new word search. This is a great activity for Spanish 1, but you could use it for Spanish 2 and Spanish 3. I mean, honestly, it's a fun activity that kids like to do, and it's also a discovery activity. Okay, and it works great in Word, Docs. You can do it verbally. You can also do it like a scavenger hunt, so it's very customizable. And it's highly engaging. Students love to explore. They like to go on the streets. If you've never been to Colombia, you know, you go to Colombia and you walk down the street on the street view, and you know, it's like going to that country in a virtual way. And so the students just love it, and they'll just sit there and play with it all day until their computer battery dies. It's great discovery learning, and it's great for comparing language across countries. You know, if I go to, like, for example, South America, I might see the word parqueadero, which is a parking lot, but in like Central America or Mexico, it might be estacionamiento. And so you learn all these different ways to say words, and learn that there's not just one way to say that, to say something. And it also reinforces cognates and comprehensible input as well. So now I'm going to show you how I would use this in the classroom. This is a document I created called Búsqueda de palabras nuevas in Google Maps, and it means new word search. And this enables students to find virtual realia using Street View and Google Maps to learn new words, basically. And they have to use the snipping tool. And so they take a snip or a snap, and then they have to say where they found it. ¿Y qué quiere decir? What does it mean? So I found one in Bucaramanga, Colombia. The snip was parqueadero, and it means parking lot. Okay, so let me show you how this works. So they're going to go to Google Maps, and if you've ever played around with Google Maps and you grab this little guy down here and pull him out, anything in blue is what's called Street View, which enables you to go up and down the street and see everything. And so I don't just drop it out anywhere because it might drop you off in the middle of the jungle. So I like to get a little bit closer. So we're going to go to Guatemala, to Quetzaltenango. And unfortunately, where I learned Spanish in Honduras, they do not have Street View. Quetzaltenango, so I pull this guy out, and I'm looking for a place where I think I'm going to find a lot of businesses and billboards and signs, okay, a lot of text that I can find new words in, okay? So if I drop in here, and then you can just kind of walk down the street. And the kids love this part because they get to explore, see new places. This probably wasn't the best part of town because I'm not finding a lot of signs. Oh, here we go, a little bit. Now I tell them you can't use names, okay? But you can use phrases. So if I look here, okay, I have Óptica Ramírez, tu punto de vista. Now I know what that means, but a Spanish 1 student may not know what that means. Okay, so they're going to use what's called the snipping tool, and that can be found in Windows, and then do a new snip. And if they wanted to know, like, what does this mean, tu punto de vista, then they just snip it, and then they copy it, go back to their document, and then they snap it in there. Okay, so now they've got tu punto de vista, they've got their snap. Now they need to say, where did they find it? That one was in Quetzaltenango. ¿Y qué quiere decir? What does it mean? Well, I know what it means, but the students probably aren't going to know what it means. So I tell them, split your screen, and you're going to go to Google Translate, set it to Spanish to English, and then you just type in what you see, tu punto de vista. And that means your point of view. and then you just hit copy translation, and then they just paste it into, oops, copy, and then just paste it into that box, your point of view. And then you can add a third box if you wanted to, asking more questions, maybe higher level questions. But that's basically how that works. And I like it because the kids explore that country. And then also you get that cultural component as well. You could talk about different types of stores, you know, like why are there so many soccer balls in Guatemala? And it just opens up so many doors for cultural discussions that you can have. All right, the next activity we're going to look at is called Búsqueda de Lugares, a place to search. And this activity is a great discovery activity, and it helps students learn about some of the important places that took place in history in those countries, or just big, you know, monuments or important buildings associated with the culture. This can be a scavenger hunt, and it's a lot of fun when it is because the kids get really competitive. A lot of times I'll do it either individuals or as groups, and if you do groups, I'll show you how you can share it on Google Docs and make groups out of it. It builds and enforces vocabulary about places. It helps students learn their geography because they have specific cities that they have to go to, and they have to find specific places in those cities. And we all know that students aren't that great at geography. It fosters high-level discussions from Bloom's taxonomy, especially when you start talking about cultural things. For example, if you talk about La Sagrada Familia, you know, you can have a discussion about, you know, Antoni Gaudí and how he started to build it, and then he died, and how they're trying to finish it, and it kind of sparks those discussions. And then it also teaches cultural nuances and history. And it's an excellent precursor to travel for those of you who like to take students to foreign countries. This is a great thing you can do in the countries that you're going to go visit, so that they kind of get a preview of what it's going to be like. So now I'm going to show you how this one works. Okay, here's the document that I made for Búsqueda de Lugares in Google Maps. And this is more geared towards a second level foreign language. So the instructions are in Spanish, so I'll just give them to you in English. They write the information that it asks for in the boxes, and they use Google Maps to find the places in the specific cities that I give them. And then they use a snipping tool to cut and paste a picture from Street View of that place, and then they have to write the specific name of the place. Afterwards, then they watch the video on YouTube about the associated place, and they answer the question in a complete sentence. The question is, ¿Qué aprendiste sobre el lugar en el video? What did you learn about the place from the video? So I've got a bunch of this unit's on places that you would go shopping or places you might go on the weekend. So the one that I'm going to pick is una zapateria, and I have to find it in Cusco, Peru. Now, before I do this, it's kind of a fun discovery activity, so you might want to do it before you've taught the vocab so that they learn what the vocab is. So if they don't know what a zapateria is, okay, then this becomes a discovery activity. So then we go to Cusco, Peru. Okay, and once you get into Cusco, then you just type in zapateria, push enter, okay? And now they've got to go in and find La Zapateria, and then they got to figure out what it is, okay, based on the street view. So here's one called Bata in Cusco, and so now I'm in the esquina, and again, this can be a cultural thing. You could talk about the architecture of Cusco, talk about how Cusco is a really old city and that the architecture reflects that. Okay, and then if I look in Bata, what do I see? Well, I see lots and lots of shoes. So what is a zapateria? Well, it's a shoe store, right? So then they've got to use their snipping tool again to snip what this is. Okay, and they got to make sure that they find the shoes in there because that's the main part. And they go back in here, snip it in there, okay? And then this specific one is called bata. Okay, and then once they've done that, then they're, oops, I didn't do that on the right one, did I? Cut, paste. And then once they do that, then they're going to watch the YouTube video associated with that place. And these are videos that you've already put in there that will then enrich what they know about that thing. So this one's about a zapateria.
Hace más de un siglo que este taller familiar echó a andar.
And it's always better if it's in the target language.
No ha dejado de crecer.
Remember, the question is, what did you learn from the video? So now they've got to write something in Spanish that they learned from the video.
Está trabajando con las manos y es cuando se cosía todo el zapato manualmente. Algunas de estas máquinas son dignas de museo.
So that could be something that I read. Antaño se cosían manualmente. Which means that they made them all by hand. And so then I go back here to my document and ¿qué aprendiste? ¿Qué hacían los zapatos a mano o manualmente? Okay. And then again, this has a cultural component. You can talk about the place and like, is that the type of place that we would have in the United States, or is this different, you know, from other places? And it creates that discussion. So anyways, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Okay, this next one's called ¿Cómo se va?, which means how do you get to? And this one's really good for levels 2 or 3. And it really helps when you're learning commands in the imperative form. It's great for interpersonal communication. This lends itself really well to doing with a partner or also in groups. It's an excellent precursor to travel as well, especially like if you're staying in a hotel and then you have certain places that you want to go in the country, then you can basically tell them how to get to those places and they can do that, you know, before they go. It provides practice with imperative verb forms, which I talked about, and it's highly engaging. Both parties have to pay attention, the person who's explaining how to get there and also the person who is doing it. And then it also teaches about monuments, architecture, and other significant places. And this also can be a scavenger hunt. You can make it a competition to see who can get to the place the fastest. Okay, so now I'll show you how this one works. ¿Cómo se va? That's the name of this assignment. It means how do you get to this place? This can be either this can be all 3 modes of communication. If you do interpersonal, then one of the partners will give the instructions while the other one follows the instructions. If you do interpretive, you could lead them to a specific billboard or sign and then talk about what it means. If you do presentational, at the end of this, you always have them give a presentation where they have to give the instructions and then everyone else in class has to follow the instructions and then they have to arrive at the correct location. And they have to use the imperative forms, the command forms. And so this is great practice because they end up talking a lot and using the forms a lot. And then it's also kind of fun to make sure that they get to the right place. And sometimes they pick kind of random places. And so I'm going to show you how this one works. This one is something that you could turn in, you know, on Canvas or whatever your learning system is. And basically how it works is I give them a starting point that I embed into the document, and then I give them instructions, and then as they follow the instructions on the map, they have to arrive at a specific place that I have already designated. And so let's go ahead and go to the first one. So first they just click on that, and it'll pull them up. to a random spot in Saltillo, Mexico. And I have a sister-in-law from Saltillo, which is why I picked that. And then I have them split the screen so that they can follow the directions while they're on the map and read it. So it says, sigue derecho en la calle Flor de Azalea por 5 cuadras, which means go straight for 5 blocks hasta la calle Azucena. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dobla a la izquierda, turn to the left. Y sigue derecho por 1 cuadra, go straight 1 block. Y dobla a la derecha en la calle Flor de Azalea. So then I take a right here again on Flor de Azalea. Sigue derecho por 2 cuadras, go 2 blocks. 1, 2. Y dobla a la izquierda en la Bolívar Eulelio Gutiérrez Treviño. So then I take a left here. Sigue derecho hasta la calle Hortensia, which is right here. So this is the end, and so they should be about right here. And then it asks a question, ¿Cuál es el restaurante a la derecha? What is the name of the restaurant to the right? Tortas Popeye. So then they grab their guy, and then they're going to get a street view. And then they've got to use their snipping tool to then get the name of the restaurant and copy and paste into the box. And then at this point, you could talk about, okay, what is a torta? Who's ever had a torta? And then you can, you know, pull up pictures of tortas and talk about how it's a giant Mexican sandwich, torta mexicana. Because kids always like to talk about food, right? And all right, so you can have them, and then I always compare it with the key. So this is my key, and so afterwards we look at it and like, okay, is that where you got? Yes, that's where I got. And then sometimes I'll have like a random thing, like a bus that's passing by as a Google cars there. That's kind of hard to find, so it's almost like a treasure hunt. Did you find the supermercado? Did you find the soccer field? And then also you can do like cultural sites. So on this one, I start them off in Parque Güell, which is a famous park in Barcelona that Antoni Gaudí designed. And then they end up in La Sagrada Familia, which is a basilica that Antoni Gaudí also designed. And then you can talk about him, and you can have that, it's kind of like a little mini history lesson. Talk about like his style of architecture and things like that. So it kind of gets you into those upper level. Yeah, so this is where I start them off. And in Spain, it's a little bit harder because you're in Catalunya. And so some of the Spanish there, well, a lot of it is Catalan. And so it looks a little bit different. So you can kind of talk about that. You can talk about the different regions in Spain and how they have different languages there as well. So I like this one because there's a lot of potential to do different things, and I like that it can be on across all modes of communication. You can simplify this for, you know, a Spanish 2 or, you know, even a Spanish 1, depending on what you're doing. So the last item in this presentation is teaching culture with maps. And in Google Maps, you've got, obviously you have the street view, but then you also have a whole bunch of pictures that you can supplement your own videos or pictures that you've taken from firsthand experience. For example, the picture on the left is a picture I took back in 2002, and then the one on the right is one that someone else put on Google Maps in 2019. And it's the same neighborhood, and you can kind of look at the differences and how has it changed. That neighborhood hasn't changed much. You can also look at architecture, city planning, history, geography. Maps is also a great way to recreate battle scenes. Whenever I teach La Batalla de Puebla, Cinco de Mayo, I always pull up the map, and then we draw the French lines and the Mexican lines using the smartboard and kind of recreate the battle scene. And this gets us into the upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy, which in foreign language, a lot of times we're kind of on the lower levels because we're learning the language. But whenever we learn about history and culture, we can get into those upper levels. And it also helps us see the world without actually going there. which can be very expensive. Plus, right now with our current situation, it makes it difficult to travel. So here's a picture I took back in 2002 of a neighborhood I worked in called El Hoyo, which means the hole. And it was called El Hoyo because it was actually built in a canyon. And it was a very poor area of Comayagüela in Honduras. And above it was a nicer neighborhood called Contra Residencial, and you can see where the wall is, and there's some bigger houses and nicer houses up above. And so whenever I teach about Honduras, we talk about the culture, we talk about, what is a third world country, and I try to put them in the shoes of someone who might live there. And photos are a great way to do that. But my photos are actually pretty old. And so, when I show them my pictures, they just kind of look old. And so I like to supplement those with photos de Google Maps. And so I take them to that same neighborhood. Comayagüela. Enter if I can find it. Here it is. Okay, and if you click on these two carrots down below, all you do is you hover over the neighborhood, click on those two carrots, and then it pulls up a bunch of pictures from that neighborhood that people have posted that live there. And so I like it because it gets you actual pictures of people who posted. So that's the same neighborhood right there, but this was taken back in 2019, so it's a much more updated picture. And then we talk about like, oh, what do houses look like, and what are they made out of, and how would you describe this neighborhood, and you have a discussion on culture. What would it be like to live there? And also people post videos and things like that. Abierto, it's a little restaurant. Talk about what is sopa de mondongo. That's the equivalent of menudo in Mexico, which is cow tripe. There's some more comida. So this is just another resource that you have from Google Maps. It isn't necessarily a street view, but it gets you some nice pictures and some nice videos from people who actually live in those countries. Okay, the other cool thing you can do with maps is you can visit archaeological sites like Tulum, which is close to Cancun in Mexico. And if you hover in there, you can actually go in and you can walk around the ruins and explore. Now, this is a great precursor to travel. If you're going to take your kids to Tulum, well, guess what? You can take them there right now. And then you can talk about, the Mayan civilization, and, Tulum was one of the last strongholds before the Spanish came. And what does it mean, etc., etc. So those are just a couple of things that you can do to teach culture using Google Maps. Nacho!
Well, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for your time and dedication to our profession. I hope I've provided you guys with some activities using Google Maps that are viable and engaging, and that you can use with your students either in the classroom or online. And stay healthy and safe in these turbulent times. This is Senor Bell saying hasta luego.